Today we'll be talking about interviews. We'll discuss types of interviews, preparing for an interview, types of interview questions, answering interview questions, and then we'll finally end with talking about the day of the interview and the interview itself. So there are a few different types of interviews. The first type that you could get invited for is a phone or screening interview, which is somewhat unique. It's typically 15 to 20 minutes, although it could be longer, where you're asked basic questions in order for the interviewer to assess if they want to give you a longer interview. The interview may be with someone from HR rather than the hiring manager, and is to gauge your interest in the position and if you are qualified for the job. This usually includes a brief review of your background and questions about your qualifications. It may include questions about your salary requirements and availability as well. If you make it past the screening interview, you may get a longer virtual or in-person interview. During these, you are usually asked higher level questions. You may meet with just one person, such as the hiring manager, or with a panel of 3 to 4 people. We'll be focusing on these types of questions for the rest of our time today. The last type of interview is a group interview, which are relatively rare. These are when multiple candidates are present at the same time. The idea behind group interviews is to see how the team will interact for a group hire, how you would navigate team dynamics. They may be looking for a balance of personalities. If you do have a group interview, please reach out to CLBR and we'll be happy to help you. But we won't be talking about any more about these today. So currently, as you all are well aware, everything is virtual because of the coronavirus pandemic. I thought I would spend a little more time talking about virtual interviews since there are some things to consider that are different from an in-person interview. First, in a video interview, if you can't create an attractive office-like background at home, use a virtual office background. So no, this is not palm trees blowing in the wind. This is something that looks professional. This will allow you to block out what's behind you in case a child or pet enters the room. But you should still have the door locked anyway and try to minimize distractions. However, if something unexpected does happen, just go with it the best you can and continue the interview. So how you handle an unexpected interruption, ideally gracefully, may actually help you make a human connection with your interviewers. If you're worried about a dog barking or a child yelling, mute yourself as much as possible and hold down the space bar in Zoom or use another shortcut in a different program when you want to talk. Also, remember to shut down emails or other online chats that might give you an audible notification during your interview. So practice, if possible, using the program you will be using for the interview. Record yourself to get a sense for the type of energy you're conveying. Put your computer up on books if you need to, so the camera is at eye level, and make sure to look at the camera as much as possible. You also want to check that your username is your real name on whatever software you're using. If you borrow someone's computer, make sure you retype your name. Also, you want to make sure your little siblings or your pet's friend, you're not using your siblings or your pet's nickname as your username, because you want this to look professional and this is something that they're going to see. Practice your call with a friend to test everything. And finally, keep your cell phone on hand and share your phone number in case the computer or internet crashes so you can continue the interview over the phone. Now let's talk about how to best prepare for an interview. It's a lot of work. You should make sure to do your research on the company or organization. Look at their website and LinkedIn sites. Google news articles on them. Companies will represent themselves one way, and someone else might talk about them another way, so you want to use more than one reference. For many companies, it's important you know their mission, their product, and understand their values before you walk into the interview. As part of preparing, you should review the work you have done on your resume and the skills that you've used. You may find it helpful to speak with old coworkers to get their thoughts or advice about experiences you've had while working together. I find that I have to think about what I did for each position, since I tend to forget some of the smaller aspects of the work that might be important skills for the current position. Next, you want to come up with a list of questions that you think the interviewer may ask. This may seem like a difficult task at first, but if you do some internet searches, you'll see that there's some pretty common questions that arise repeatedly in many interviews. And finally, you want to think about and practice answering these questions. So I write down the answers first, then I start practicing them aloud. You can talk through your answers with a friend, a parent, or a career advisor. I always talk through my questions with my mother-in-law. The more practice you have speaking about your experiences, the better you'll do when you're nervous. So just because you completed a work experience does not necessarily mean that you can speak about it intelligently until you practice doing so. Now let's talk about different types of interview questions. Traditional questions ask about your strengths, goals, and workplace preferences. Some examples of these type of questions might be, tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? Why should we hire you? Why do you want to work for this company? Why are you leaving your current job? Behavioral interview questions ask you to reflect on past experiences to predict how you would handle future situations. This is the preferred type of interview question now, and you will probably see most of this type of question. Some examples include, tell me about a time when you had to go above and beyond to get the job done. Tell me about when you had tell me about when you had too much to do and had to prioritize tasks. Give an example of a time when you failed at something. Give an example of a difficult situation you faced and how you handled it. Tell us about a time when you've had to work under pressure. In situational type questions, you might get a hypothetical or real scenario proposed to you and be asked how you would handle certain circumstances. So these types of questions require you to use your problem-solving skills. So examples of these types of questions might be, how would you pitch our product or service? What changes would you make if you ran our company or department? How would you handle it if you were assigned a project with a coworker and you two had differing opinions on how to proceed? What would you do if you were working hard on a project and were almost finished when the goals or priorities changed? Now you know about the different types of interview questions. Let's talk about a technique for answering them. So it's called STAR and stands for Situation, Task, Action, and Result. When asked a behavioral interview question, you want to talk through these 4 points. Let's go through an example together. So say you were asked, tell me about a time when you performed well under pressure. So the first step begins with describing the situation. So you may say something like, one time at my last job, my coworker had a family emergency and needed to miss work for some time, which left their very important project unfinished and without a manager. So in the next step, you'll give them a task. So my supervisor instructed me to take on the project with no leniency on the deadline. I had days to complete a project that originally should have taken weeks. Then you'll talk about the action taken to solve the problem. So you may say something like, I requested and was granted a reduction in my weekly goals, allowing me more time to focus on the special project. I was able to delegate my weekly goals to some of my teammates. And then finally, you'll talk about the results of your actions. For example, you may say, with the reduction in my normal duties, I was able to dedicate more time to the special project. This allowed me to finish it on time and with complete accuracy. My supervisor appreciated my attitude and drive, and I was given several more projects after that, along with an eventual promotion and pay raise. So you're basically talking through a story and ending the question with a takeaway. So keep in mind that the result doesn't always have to be positive. As long as you've learned something from the experience, it's a good answer to the question. So once you've researched the company, reviewed your own work experiences, thought of example questions, and star answers to those questions, you're able to easily talk through them with lots of practice. You're ready for the interview. But there's one more thing to do before the interview, and that's think through the details. So decide on what you'll wear, map out directions, consider traffic, pack whatever you plan to bring. So this should include a professional notebook with a list of questions that you plan to ask your interviewer. You should never say you don't have any questions, since this could be viewed as disinterest. So you want to make sure to take care of yourself. Try to relax the night before, get plenty of sleep, and make sure you wake up with plenty of time so you don't need to rush, even if something unexpected happens. So on the day of the interview, make sure to show up on time. Now I know this seems like a no-brainer, but there are things to think about, like what if you get lost? So to be on time really means if everything goes smoothly, you'll pull into the parking lot early, essentially. So if you're too early, just kill some time before you go in. So review your notes, take a deep breath, go for a walk. You probably don't want to enter until about 5 minutes before your scheduled time, so you don't want to run into the candidate before you. So remember to turn off or silence your cell phone. You can make a few short notes or reminders to yourself for talking points in your notebook and refer to those during the interview. You can also refer to your list of questions when you're given time at the end to ask them. So as soon as you can after the interview, you should send a thank you note or email. It's typically recommended that you send this within 24 hours. So view this as an opportunity to continue to build a connection with your interviewers. For example, you could refer to something that happened in your interaction that helps them remind why you are a strong candidate. And then finally, congratulate yourself. It's over. I find that after an interview, I end up thinking through the questions and how I could have answered them better. Then I get upset with myself. So it's good to think through the questions and what you can do better for the next interview. View it as a learning experience, but make sure not to be too hard on yourself. I mean, of course, you could have answered the questions better if you had more time to think about them, right? So reflect on what you did well and what you could do next time to improve. And think about if the company will be a good fit for you. So remember that you're assessing if it's the right place for you and not just vice versa. Can you see yourself working with those people that just interviewed you for 40 hours a week? These are all good and important things to consider. So finally, don't forget to relax and reward yourself. So now I'd like you to use the document titled Interview Prep Worksheet associated with this video to prepare for a job interview. You should have found a job announcement that you were interested in a little earlier this week. Use the job advertisement as you craft your interview questions based off the skills listed for the job. So the worksheet asks you to write out the job requirements and skills required for the position, followed by your appropriate skills and experiences. Then you should draft one potential question per skill requirement and one appropriate answer using the STAR method. Well, good luck, and thanks for listening.